Welcome to the Factal Forecast, a look at the week's biggest stories and what they mean from the editors at Factal. I'm Jimmy Lovaas. Today is May 14th, and in this week's forecast, we've got growing concerns over the war in Iran, a primary election in Louisiana, a general strike in Italy, Taiwan's legislature voting on impeachment against President Lai, and NOAA's outlook for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. You can also read about these stories and more in our weekly newsletter, which you'll find a link to in the show notes. Up first, we'll catch up on the war in Iran. For more on that, I've got the lead for our Middle East coverage, Ahmed Namatalla. Hello, Ahmed.
Hello, Jimmy.
Thanks for your time today. It's been a few weeks since we've talked about the war in Iran. Looks like things aren't as buttoned up as everyone was hoping. So, what's been going on?
The latest developments really can be summed up into just attempts by all sides to test each other, test the ceasefire that has been going on for about a month. So far, all sides appear to show that they are not ready to restart this conflict, at least through direct military confrontation. So during the past couple of weeks, we saw the United States intercept multiple Iranian vessels, most recently even carrying out a strike that caused a fire on board a commercial Iranian ship. Iran hasn't responded despite its previous threats to do so and to specifically attack U.S. assets in the region. On the other hand, prior to that, Iran shot at U.S. naval vessels that were trying to guide commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz in an attempt to break its closure. They also struck a South Korean ship and then proceeded to carry out attacks on the United Arab Emirates, ones which they later denied. Nevertheless, these attacks were not met by any sort of U.S. response. And in fact, the U.S. maintained that they did not violate the ceasefire. Connected to all of this is Israel, which has restarted bombing southern Lebanon quite intensely and has even bombed Beirut. This has not received the promised Iranian response either. So what we see is all sides just maintaining a state of no war, but also no peace, and showing reluctance to resume direct fighting.
Well, have there been any recent developments you can think of that you haven't mentioned there?
What we're seeing is really attempts to gain leverage in these talks that are happening behind closed doors through Pakistan with publicly aggressive rhetoric. The U.S. maintains that it will not concede anything to Iran, and Iran is doing the same. But we're seeing their demands being narrowed down somewhat. So on the side of the U.S., for example, we're only hearing from the Trump administration that they want Iran to not have the ability to develop a nuclear weapon. It should be noted that at the start of this war, the IAEA, the world's nuclear watchdog, stated publicly that Iran was not close to developing a nuclear program. Nevertheless, this is what the U.S. is focused on now. This could involve Iran adhering to lower uranium enrichment, suspension of uranium enrichment, perhaps even transferring part or all of its highly enriched uranium to a third party. We don't know the details of what is being discussed, but it should be assumed that whatever the result is, It needs to satisfy the US's demand that Iran not be able to develop a nuclear weapon over at least the medium term. For Iran, it appears that they want to maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz, or at least say that they do, and receive some kind of compensation for the damage that's been done to their infrastructure. This could theoretically come through the unfreezing of billions of dollars in assets, which the U.S. has imposed. You can see that kind of exchange possibly resolving this conflict, at least for the foreseeable future, to allow the Strait of Hormuz to reopen.
Well, what sort of reactions have you seen to all this?
The reactions I've really taken notice of is in the Persian Gulf, the Arab Gulf states, notably in the United Arab Emirates, which appears to be increasingly growing more hawkish, more anti-Iran. They have taken multiple steps to crack down on internal dissent, expel Iranians, make it harder for Iranians to travel to the country. And recently we saw reports, credible media reports, that they actually conducted attacks on Iran during the war. We've also seen reports of Saudi Arabia conducting attacks inside Iraq, probably targeting assets of Iranian-backed militias, which we have seen credible reports that they have attacked Saudi Arabian assets. It should be noted that if there is a Gulf party that is standing firm on demands to degrade Iran's power as much as possible, it's the UAE at this point, with possibly Saudi Arabia not being as hawkish, but still aligned with the main goal of degrading Iran.
Well, considering all that, what do you think folks ought to be watching for next then?
There are two main things we should be watching for. One is U.S. President Trump's visit to China and meetings with his counterpart there. It should be noted that the president is being accompanied by executives from U.S. tech firms. This is in a lot of ways unprecedented. Usually U.S. presidents in the rare visits that they have made to China have been accompanied by security personnel, defense, though this time we're seeing a focus on conducting business, possibly reaching agreement over trade. Another thing that ties to China is its ability to possibly intervene in the Strait of Hormuz standoff because it buys Iranian oil and Persian Gulf oil from Arab Gulf countries. In fact, the most recent estimate I saw indicates that China imports about half of its oil from the region. This gives it leverage to be able to perhaps pressure Iran. At least that's the theory. Another country that we might see weigh in here is Russia. We've seen Russia's state-owned nuclear agency declare that it's ready to move Iran's enriched uranium. President Putin backed out that call just a couple of days ago. And so maybe the answer here lies with either Russia or China or a combination of both. Finally, right here in the US, there is growing pressure on the Trump administration to address inflation. We've seen inflation climb in April, just from the most recent reading this week, and comments by President Trump indicate that he would support cutting or at least suspending the federal gas tax. That would knock a few cents off gasoline prices and maybe offer a temporary solution to this ongoing problem, which, even if an agreement is reached tomorrow, still stands to impact the U.S. and global economies for many months to come.
Well, Ahmed, we'll pause there for today, but as usual, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate you keeping such a close eye on things for us, and appreciate you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Voters in Louisiana will weigh in on a contentious U.S. Senate race and 5 proposed constitutional amendments on Saturday. Still, elections for the state's 6 U.S. House seats remain on hold. Governor Jeff Landry suspended voting in those House races after a Supreme Court ruling last month found Louisiana's congressional maps were an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. That decision has led to redistricting efforts across much of the South. More than 45,000 ballots had already been cast in Louisiana before the House races were paused. Now, while House races remain uncertain, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy faces a tight contest against Representative Julie Letlow and State Treasurer John Fleming. Voters will also decide on potential changes to the state's constitution on issues including teacher pay, business taxes, and judicial retirement ages. Finally, it's unclear when primaries under new congressional maps will be held, as state lawmakers are debating potential changes that could shift the balance of seats currently held by Democrats toward Republicans. Meanwhile, polling suggests the Republican Senate race is likely headed to a runoff. A nationwide strike across Italy may begin on Sunday night. Many workers in transport, education, and healthcare are expected to walk off the job for 24 hours as part of a protest organized by the trade union Unione Sindacale di Base, or USB. The strike is aimed at opposing war and rearmament policies. USB pointed to Israel's actions in the Middle East and accused both Israel and the United States of pushing the world toward what it called a permanent war. Now, if the strike moves forward, major disruptions are expected across the country. Public transportation, schools, healthcare services, and public administration will all likely be affected. The strike is scheduled to begin at 9 p.m. on Sunday and continue through 9 p.m. on Monday. Hospitals are expected to keep emergency rooms open, though appointments could be canceled. Classes may also be suspended at schools across Italy. Taiwan's legislature is set to vote on whether to impeach President Lai on Tuesday. The effort is being led by opposition parties that control the legislature, mainly the Kuomintang and the Taiwan People's Party. Lawmakers accuse Lai of violating constitutional norms after he refused to promulgate a major fiscal bill passed by Parliament. The measure would have given local governments a larger share of public revenue. Lai's refusal to sign it marked the first time in contemporary Taiwanese history that a president declined to approve a bill passed by the Parliament. Now, the impeachment vote would require support from 2/3 of lawmakers in order to move forward. Many analysts believe that outcome is unlikely. The vote is widely seen as symbolic, signifying a broader power struggle following Taiwan's 2024 elections. Lai's Democratic Progressive Party won the presidency, but the opposition coalition controls the legislature. The two sides remain divided over budget authority, legislative oversight, and the balance of power between Parliament and the presidency. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is set to release its Atlantic hurricane season outlook next Thursday. Last month, researchers at Colorado State University predicted slightly below-average hurricane activity this year, similar to last season. Though no hurricanes made landfall in the United States then, officials noted that Tropical Storm Chantal killed 6 people and caused millions of dollars in damage across the Carolinas. Last season saw one of the strongest hurricanes to ever make landfall when Hurricane Melissa reached Jamaica in October. That hurricane devastated parts of the region and killed dozens of people. Now, meteorologists say an El Niño is anticipated in the coming months, likely impacting hurricane activity. Next week's outlook is expected to provide a clearer picture of what to expect during the season. At the same time, there are other unknowns, including possible changes to the federal government's response. Last week, a council appointed by President Donald Trump proposed sweeping changes to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, though many of the changes would require congressional action. The president also nominated Cameron Hamilton last week to lead FEMA. As always, thank you for listening to the Factal Forecast. We publish our forward-looking podcast and newsletter each Thursday to help you get a jump start on the week ahead. Please subscribe and review wherever you find your podcasts, and we'd love it if you'd consider telling a friend about us. Today's episode includes work from Factal editors Joe Vieira, Michael Archer, Avess Ahmed, and Teresa Seeger. Our interview featured editor Ahmed Namatalla, and our podcast is produced and edited by me, Jimmy Lovaas. Our music comes courtesy of Andrew Gospie. Until next time, if you have any feedback, suggestions, or events we've missed, drop us a note by emailing hello@factal.com.